Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be talking about what all's entailed in buying a house. Now, you see up here the very first word we have is what is a mortgage? Well, a mortgage is really just a home loan. It's just a fancy name for a loan. That's it. The home is used as collateral, which means that if you don't pay the loan back, the bank gets to keep your home. Because you're using that as collateral, banks will give you a better interest rate than they would on a cash loan. If you take out a loan for cash from a bank, you have to pay a higher interest rate because you might just blow all the cash and then the bank doesn't get anything. But at least with a home, if you can't make your payment, the bank will take your home, and then recoup some of its losses. Typically, you have to make a down payment. Now, that down payment may vary from as low as 0% up to 20%, or could even be higher. I am going to advise you to try to plan for this 20%. Now, just like I've mentioned before in my other videos, I'm not a professional. I don't underwrite loans. I don't sell houses professionally. We're just talking about some things that are involved in buying a house. And one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give you is please try your best to get that 20% down payment if you can, because it's going to save you money in the long run by you not having to pay extra insurance. Okay, so if you don't get a 20% down payment, you have to pay something called private mortgage insurance. And all that does is it protects a bank if you can't make a payment. So PMI, or private mortgage insurance, is not anything you want. And if you have less than a 20% down payment, you'll probably have to pay PMI. Now, with a fixed loan rate, the interest rate is going to be the same the whole time. With an adjustable loan rate, that can change. So you might get what's called an ARM, an adjustable rate mortgage, and that just may change with time. These can be good or they can be bad. I prefer the fixed rates because I know that my payment's going to be the same every single month. If rates go up, your mortgage payment might go up a couple $100 over a 6-month time period, or 1 month, or however long your loan says that they can adjust the rates. The final step in a home buying process is called the closing. You may have heard people talk about, like, oh, we're closing on our house this Friday. And really, that just kind of involves signing a whole bunch of papers. During the closing process, you may be required to pay one or more points. Now, points are considered prepaid interest. And what it allows you to do is it allows you to get a slightly better interest rate by paying a little bit money now. We'll explore that a little more later on. Some banks wrap this up automatically and don't even tell you they're doing it. So it is something to be aware of, and you definitely want to ask your lender about points, whether or not you have to purchase them. And in general, if you're not going to have this particular loan for more than about 5 years, then it's not really advantageous for you to buy points, and you want to try to avoid it. If you plan on having the loan for more than about 5 years, buying points is something that you may want to consider. This formula shows you how to calculate the monthly mortgage payment. Now, this is, again, just like some of the other things we've explored with our finances, this formula is derived from a geometric series, just like that annuities formula. Over here, we do have one different variable, which is big M, or that is the mortgage amount. I used a big capital M here because it's usually a pretty big number. So big M for a big number. The mortgage amount, if your house loan costs $200,000, then big M would be 200,000, and then we'll solve for whatever your monthly payment will be. These other variables are all similar to other things we've done with finances in the past, where R is your interest rate. Please write it as a decimal. And is the number of payments per year. Typically, this will be 12. And then T is our number of years. Lizeth wishes to purchase a house selling for $550,000. She plans to obtain a loan from her bank, and the bank requires a 20% down payment at the time of closing. So that means when she shows up to sign all of her paperwork, they're going to say, great, we still need a check for 20% of the selling price. So let's go ahead and figure out how much that's going to be. So 20% of the selling price is the down payment. So this will be 0.2, and then of means multiply. The selling price, that's 550,000, and then is the down payment. So we'll just use our calculator for this. That's easy enough. Lizeth needs $110,000 for her down payment. That means she's going to give them a check for that right now. That's not what she's taking the loan out for. Part B says determine the amount of the mortgage. Remember, mortgage is just a fancy name for the loan. Now, when we go to calculate the loan, what we're going to do is we're going to take the selling price minus the down payment. That will be the loan amount. So in this case, our selling price is $550,000. We're going to subtract off that down payment, that money that she gives them right now, and then that means that her loan amount will be $440,000. This is how much money she's going to borrow from the bank. Also, this will be big M. That's the mortgage. Part C says determine the monthly mortgage payment. Notice that this is different. Now we're not looking for the mortgage. The mortgage is $440,000. Remember, mortgage, that's the name of the loan. So the loan is $440,000. The mortgage payment or the loan payment is how much she's going to pay every single month. That means that we're going to use this large formula that we have up here at the top of the screen in order to figure out her monthly payment. That will be all this. So we will say her payment equals big M, and then our rate is going to be 5.5%, which we'll use 0.055. We use 12 for the N because we're talking about a monthly payment. This will be over 1 minus 1 plus 0.055 over 12 raised to the negative 12 times 30 power. Now, that's a lot, but let's make sure we understand where all that came from. Hopefully, you've done enough problems with finance in the past to know that when we see an interest rate, we're going to say 5.5%. Nope, we'll write that as 0.55, and that's our R. Of course, we see it's a 30-year mortgage, so T is 30. We do see that it's a monthly rate. That's how I got N is equal to 12. And then, of course, we had our 440,000 was our big M. That was our monthly payment. I'm sorry, that's our mortgage amount in order to find the monthly payment. Next, let's put this into our calculator. This is a very large formula that we put into Desmos. This would be very tough to do on a smaller calculator. If you are using a smaller calculator, please go ahead and change over, download the Desmos app, and work on there. It's so much cleaner. All right. So her payment every single month will be this. And now that $2,498, I do just want to add one more thing. That doesn't include insurance and taxes that you would have to pay. That's actually going to get added on to this. So in real life, you'd actually have to pay even more than this. Lizeth does decide to move forward with purchasing the home. She made the 20% down payment, which we've already calculated, and she got a 30-year conventional mortgage with 5.5% interest rate. Lizeth had to pay 2 points at the closing in order to lower the interest rate from 6% down to 5%. So because she bought those 2 points, that's why she ended up getting an interest rate of 5.5%. And this is something that a number of loan officers will do. They'll quote you a rate and they'll say, we'll get you a loan, we'll get you a mortgage rate at 5.5%. And then in the fine print, it will say, but you have to pay for 2 points. Remember, 1 point costs 1% of the loan amount, and it reduces your mortgage rate by 0.25% typically. So because the bank originally said that you were at 6%, but because you buy 2 points, we'll reduce it down to 5.5%. So let's calculate the cost of 2 points that Lizeth paid. Now remember, it is 1% of the loan amount. This is a mistake that a lot of students will make, is they don't consider it the loan amount, but they think of it as the selling cost. That's not true. So remember, 2% we'll use 0.02 of means to multiply, and then the loan amount is not 550,000, it's 440,000, because remember, she gave them a down payment of $110,000. Therefore, her mortgage, which we found up in the previous problem, her mortgage was 440,000. So now we're just going to take 0.02 times 440,000. This just comes out to be $8,800. The cost of 2 points is $8,800. If Lizeth gives them that money, then they will lower the interest rate from 6% down to 5.5%. Determine the total amount Lizeth will pay for her house over the course of 30 years. Lizeth has a lot of things going into this house as far as actually buying the house. To start with, though, let's take her payment, and then we'll add on the other things. Remember, her payment was $2,498.27. And remember, her payment, she was making that payment every single month for 30 years. So you can do 12 times 30 and get 360 if you want, but that's why I like writing it like this, because it's a monthly payment for 30 years. Now remember though, she is giving them more money than just these monthly payments. She's already given them some money, right? Remember back in the previous problem, she gave them her down payment. And in addition to the down payment, she also had to give them the money for the points. Remember, we found out that she gave them an extra $8,800 in order to get her interest rate as low as it is. The total cost that Lizeth will pay for this house, that's the actual purchase price of the house, the $550,000, along with all of the interest. And remember, the 2 points that she paid for, that does count as interest. It counts as prepaid interest. And so you add up all of the interest and the cost of the house, that gets a total of a little over $1 million. The next thing that we're going to look at now is how much of the cost is actually interest. How much of this $1 million is extra money? Well, that's relatively easy to figure out. We're going to take the total amount she paid, and we're going to subtract off the selling price of the house. In other words, if she walked in with the $550,000, she wouldn't have had to pay any extra money, or she wouldn't have to pay any interest. So let's go ahead and subtract off the selling cost of the house. That means that in total, she will have paid $468,000 in interest. That may seem kind of crazy because the actual price of the house is $550,000, and so the amount of interest is actually almost the same amount as how much she paid for the selling price. Sometimes, depending on the interest rate, it will actually be more than the cost of the house. That might feel unfair, and I do get that, but also understand that you're using someone's money, you're using the bank's money for almost 30 years' time. So that's a pretty long loan. What would the monthly payment have been without paying the points? So without paying the points, what we're going to do is we're going to use that same formula we did on the previous problem, but we're going to use an R value of 0.06 instead of 0.055. 0.055 was with the points. We're not going to use that because we're going to say, what if she had said, nah, that's okay. I don't want to buy the points. I'm just going to pay the 6% interest. If she hadn't bought the points, her payment wouldn't be that $24.98, it would be $26.38. So buying those points reduced her monthly payment by, about $150. Let's go ahead and find out exactly how much it is, because the next problem says, how much does Lizeth save each month by paying those 2 points? We're going to take what it would have been and subtract off what it is. We'll just find the difference. So every month, Lizeth is going to have a monthly mortgage payment that's $139.75 less than it would have been otherwise. She's going to save $139 every single month. Every month over the course of the whole loan, her payment is $139 cheaper. How many monthly payments does it take for Lizeth to see a benefit from paying those points? What we're going to do is take the cost of buying those points and divide it by $139.75. This is just going to show us how many months until she's essentially saved $8,800. About 63 months in this case. This is a situation where you would probably round up anyways, no matter what. But this is a little more than 5 years. And what that means is that if she was going to stay in this house and keep this loan for about 5 years or longer, then buying points is advantageous because she's saving $139 every single month. But if she knows that she only plans on living in this house for 2 or 3 years, it would not be advantageous for her to buy those points. Let me say that again, because I'm not a realtor. I'm not a mortgage loan officer. Talk to the professionals. But this is just the numbers that make sense to me anyways, and I hope that they're making sense to you. Her break-even point on those points is about 5 years. So if you don't plan on having that loan for at least 5 years, it's not worth it to buy the points. There are some situations where the bank essentially will kind of make you buy the points because you don't qualify for it otherwise. That's a situation you're going to have to deal with your loan officer and the mortgage officer. But if you have a choice, I want you to really think about it and say, yeah, we have a really good interest rate right now. Let's go ahead and get it as low as we can. We know we're going to stay in this neighborhood forever. Let's buy the points. Personally, I knew that we would be refinancing our house in another year or two after we bought it. And so I did not want to buy the points on the first loan. You don't get that money back if you buy the points. That money's gone. So the break-even point is usually somewhere close to this 5 to 6 year mark in almost all cases. How much does Lizeth save in interest over 30 years by paying the 2 points at closing? There's a couple ways that we could do this, but let's just go ahead and do this kind of like what we did up here for part B. Let's find the total amount she's going to pay for this house if she doesn't buy those 2 points. We'll take her monthly payment if she doesn't buy the 2 points. And after multiplying that by the total number of payments that she has, we get $949,000. But remember, she still had her down payment. And we can see that she pays a little over $1 million. So $1,059,687. The next thing that we'll do is subtract off what the cost was if she did buy the points. By buying those 2 points and spending the $8,800 right up front, she was able to save $41,000 over the life of her loan. One thing that's kind of interesting, though, is this next question. If Lizeth, instead of giving that $8,800 to the bank and getting her interest rate lower, if she had invested the $8,800 at 6% compounded monthly, what would its value be after 30 years? The first thing that we're going to do is remind ourselves of the compound interest formula, and then we'll just start substituting the numbers in. We can see that our P is going to be $8,800. Our R will be 6%. We'll use 0.06. N is going to be monthly, so that's 12 because it's compounded monthly. And then remember, 6%, we always use the decimal. And lastly, we are going to do this for 30 years. So let's go ahead and substitute those numbers into this formula. We can see that if she had taken that $8,800 and just invested it at 6%, she would actually make about $53,000 over the course of these 30 years. And what this kind of shows us is that if you can get an interest rate that's higher than the rate that you'd be paying on your house, it might not make sense at all to buy points. The problem is having an interest rate that is safe and secure at 6%. And I know we've talked about this in the past before. Investing in stocks over the long term has typically been relatively safe and consistent. You should be able to get a pretty safe 6% for that. But this is up to you. Once again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just a guy that likes playing with numbers. One of the advantages, though, to putting that money up front is it does give you a lower monthly payment for you to handle each month. If you were to put this in a nice account and save this money, it is going to grow up to be a little bit more in this case, and you would have access to this in case of an emergency. So there are some trade-offs, but just something to think about. I think it's kind of interesting. Let's go ahead and explore the difference between a 30-year and a 15-year mortgage and what those cost differences will be. The Dinez family is purchasing a house for $450,000 and will make a 20% down payment and finance the remaining balance on a conventional mortgage at 6% interest. How much is the down payment and how much will they mortgage? Well, the down payment is 20% of the selling price. Their down payment is going to be $90,000. How much are they going to mortgage? Remember, the mortgage amount, that's the loan amount. The loan amount is going to be the selling price minus the down payment. They're going to need to walk into the bank and give the bank $90,000 in order to buy this house, and then the bank is going to write them a note for $360,000 or give that money to the people selling the house. So the mortgage amount will be $360,000. Next, we're going to calculate the payment on a 15-year loan and how much in total interest or how much in total will this loan cost. Let's get our formula written and our numbers plugged in on a 15-year loan with the information provided. We can see that the monthly payment on a 15-year loan is going to be $3,037.88. Now, from there, we have to figure out the total amount that they're going to pay for the loan. This is the total cost of this $450,000 house if they choose to go with a 15-year loan. You'll notice that I did have to add back in the down payment if you're wondering what that $90,000 was from. But we have to add in the total cost of all of our payments along with the cost of the down payment. And that's where we get our $636,000. There were no points purchased, so that's the total cost on a 15-year loan. I just realized that I actually have to be careful. That's not my answer to the question. The question says, how much in total will this loan cost in interest? What I have here is the total cost of the house. And so if I were to instead subtract off the selling price of the house, I do now get the total amount of interest paid for this house. There are other ways to do it, and I do want to show you one real quick. I wanted to do it this way because it felt more consistent with how we did it in the last problem. But another thing we could have done is we could have just found the total amount that we paid back on the loan and subtracted off that loan amount. You can see we do still get the same amount. And I like showing both of those ways because the second way is the way that I would probably normally do this. I just wanted to do it the first way because, like I said, it's more consistent with what we did originally. We found the total cost of the house, and then we subtracted off the selling price, and that gets us the interest. That's just how we did it before. This is the total amount paid back on the loan minus the loan amount gets us the extra money we paid on the loan, which of course is also just the interest. So on this 15-year loan, they pay $186,000 roughly in interest. One thing I want to also comment on is if you were to leave this number in the calculator, you have some fractions of a penny, and you may end up coming up with an answer that's slightly off. Maybe at the end of all of this, you're off by $1 or $2. I think that's probably fine, and that's just going to come up as rounding error. I chose to round the number and use the 3,037.88 instead of keep the whole number in the calculator. If you use an amortization table or a TVM solver, you might end up getting some numbers that are just slightly different than this. Just make sure you have work to support your answer. Let's continue on with our problem though. The next thing we're going to do is calculate a 30-year loan and how much in total this is going to cost in interest on a 30-year loan. Let's put our numbers into our equation. We do get a monthly payment of $2,158.38. Notice that that's substantially less than the monthly payment on the 15-year loan because we're trying to pay back the loan in 15 years on Part C, and we're paying that same amount, that $360,000, we're paying it back in 30 years on Part D. So of course, when you have longer time to pay it, you're going to have to pay a smaller monthly payment. But something that's interesting is, remember, we're now going to be paying for 30 years instead of 15. So let's find the total amount that we paid. So you can see that the total amount of interest paid over 30 years is substantially more than the total amount paid over 15 years. That's huge. So if you can afford to make that larger payment, you'll save a lot over the life of the loan. Now, there's a lot of things to weigh. Can you make that payment, or will that payment make you house poor? Like maybe that payment is too much for you. Also, if you do have a good interest rate, that difference isn't going to be quite as much, and you might be better off investing the difference. But there's a lot of things to take into consideration. So I would just do your homework, so to speak, when it comes to buying a house. Find some people you trust and get as much advice as you can. Now, there are shorter ways to do that problem. Find this amount and just subtract off the $360,000 loan payment, and you can bypass some of that middle work. Calculate the difference in the monthly payments. So by doing the 15-year option, your mortgage payment is going to be $879 a month more than it would be by doing the 30-year option. Let's go ahead and clean some of this up and then move on to the next couple problems. How much money in interest will the Diaz family save if they take the 15-year loan option instead? Well, this is pretty easy because all we have to do is subtract those two values from that we got above. So by paying the loan off in 15 years instead of 30, they're going to save themselves $230,000. by making those payments that are just a little bit more. So if you can afford it, seems like a pretty good idea. If the Diaz family chooses a 30-year loan and invests the monthly payment difference into an annuity earning 6% interest, how much will the annuity be worth after 30 years? The first thing we have to do is remind ourselves of what the annuity formula is from a previous lesson. And now we'll substitute that 879.50 in for the payment, and we're going to put that in every single month for 30 years. So if they were to take their loan out for 30 years instead of 15 years, sure, they're going to pay more in interest on their house, but they would also free up an extra $879 a month. And if they were responsible and took that $879 a month and invest it, they would get this $883,000, which is a substantial amount more than what they're saving in interest. Lastly, we're going to take a look at one last option where what if they do the 15-year mortgage and then after they're done paying off their house, they just keep paying that $3,000 payment. Remember, their payment that they were making each month was $3,037.88. After they get done paying their house, what if they say, hey, we've been making this payment, we're used to it. Let's just take that over the next 15 years and let's just invest it. Let's keep making that payment but pay ourselves, and we'll put that into an annuity. As you can see, we come out with pretty much the same answer. And that has to do with the fact that we're really paying the same amount of money, whether it's to the bank and whether it's like all to the bank up front and then all to us, or if we're paying some of it to the bank and some of it to us over the course of all of these 30 years. The $2 difference that we have here just has to do with rounding error on our monthly payment. I know that's a lot of numbers to take in, and there's a lot going on here. Buying a house is one of the more complicated things that you will do in life, and it's probably going to be your largest expenditure. So when it comes time to do that, please make sure you find some people you trust. Find people who've done it before, and they really felt good about their realtor. They really liked the bank that they worked with. Get those personal opinions. Go online and find some reviews, but you really do need to trust the person that you're going to be probably your most expensive purchase of your life. And you're going to be paying for this for 15 to 30 years, maybe even more. All that said, I hope this was interesting to you. And when it does come time to buy a house, make sure you're planning for it, you're preparing for it ahead of time. You want to make sure that you have good credit, that maybe you've cleared off some of your smaller debts that you have. So when you want to buy a house, you plan several years before you buy the house so that you can set yourself up. You've got that good credit. Maybe you have your car paid off. You don't have any credit card debt. And then you'll be in a really good place to buy a house. All right. Well, thanks for spending some time with me. I hope this was helpful. And until next time, good luck.